Well, maybe the first question, how are local, state, national, and global issues addressed in this congregation?
I think it's a combination of local and global issues.
You think it's local
We have
and global?
peacemakers, and then there's activities.
What about interfaith dialogue? I think there's been a lot of discussion about working with, well, first of all, the other churches in the denomination, because there's a fair amount of that.
Oh, yeah.
We're not,
But
okay.
you're just looking at venue setting?
No,
We're just looking at these focus things.
we're kind of rank.
Right.
See, if you have a page, you go through them and kind of discuss them, and then rank how strong we are
Okay.
in of the animal up in your brain, those.
So
Yeah.
for the three questions on focus, how are the issues addressed in the congregation? Which ones get the most attention? We've
Yeah.
brainstormed some of that. Would most members be able to name one or two social justice issues that the church is engaged in? I think they would.
Yeah.
I think we can name, whether they personally are involved, they could name the issues that get addressed.
I was going to say number 12. I think people in the wider community see us very much as an engaged peace and justice church. I get that response all the time. You're really into peace.
I think one of the reasons for that is our participation in Minnesota Alliance of Peacemakers.
Also, Habitat for Humanity is an area
yes.
where our church works with
Yeah,
other
that's
churches.
national.
And so I always hear that when we work.
Well, and we've given money now to yesterday's St. Thomas Forum
Muslim peace.
on, that would be peace and on Islam and learning.
I have the
So it'd be local because we're trying to work with the groups here as well as, you know, the whole world.
Right.
There's sort of people who have higher interest in this, and so we might perceive it as higher.
Right.
But if we talk to all the different people in the congregation, I'm not sure the answers would be the same.
Okay, then strategy is right under this, under page 98. It says, how clearly defined and understood are the objectives for the public ministry, social outreach, and social justice your church is doing? Does anybody want to answer that?
We have it.
we have, so that's, I go above 0.
Well, these
But not much.
these things have been sitting out in the social hall almost continuously, most Sundays for years, and if people haven't seen that and become aware of that, I don't know where they've been.
What are the objectives?
What are the
What are the
objectives?
objectives?
Well, they're right
This is
here.
a peace and justice church,
Okay.
and peace and justice is integral to all the activities of the church.
To me, that's
Sometimes in Peacemakers we talk about, are we preaching to the choir and what does that mean? So I'm interested in feedback on that.
Clear for the youth. I mean, that I think that there's a full plan for, you know, the kids come in and they go through this whole process. I think it's less clear for the adults.
Okay.
Overall.
You're talking about an
overall
umbrella.
objective.
I have
Adult
never
was
been
clear.
on session, and I don't know if they ever consider the amount of money that comes in and what portion would go for world or mission outreach.
Ernie, could you speak to that?
I think it'd be fairly safe to say that the session is fairly well informed about those things, objectives, and so on. I don't think much evaluation takes place at the session level.
I think for mission and social justice, there are objectives, but the other things like Dorothy Day, Hallie Q. Brown, we're participants. We're not the ones who started those programs. We're participants.
Yeah.
Things that we're responsible for in our church, mission and social justice, we know what the objectives are.
I don't think there's necessarily a connection between the activities, which we write about in the annual report. I mean, there's an MSJ report, there's a Peacemakers report, whatever, and the budget, which is then multiple pages later, because a lot of the budget is hidden in labels like local mission, or it doesn't say what our local mission is or what the objectives are. We talked about doing a better job for new members of session in educating them about what we do and what's the history, the things that Gloria and other people have done. We're talking about Margot and Don currently, but this church has a rich history of mission and social justice activities.
Mhm.
But it's not,
It's
you
not
can end up preaching to the choir. There's some people who know it very well, but then it's how do you tell it to the new members or to people who aren't as involved.
Right. So I think we should say unclear social ministry objectives to the congregation, maybe. Does that make sense?
When does an evaluation take place? Does it in the whole church, or is that in committee, or?
With the Hallie Q. Brown, from time to time, they'll announce how many pounds of food, you know, or we hear from the mission trip, you know, what they did, what they actually went out and did. People want to be involved, they want to hear it. The information is put out to this is where you can go to find it. But,
Right.
you know, out of all the members of the church, not everybody's going to be really interested in that.
I think I took to heart the comment here from last time that a lot of it gets caught up in advertising for volunteers to do Habitat, to do Dorothy Day, and there's less stories about what goes on there and what's the feedback from the participants. Either what's the impact on us as Christians in our congregation, or what's the impact on the people being served, and that we need to start telling the rest of the story.
What is the big picture of what we're doing?
No, I mean, we don't have to be running it to have a strategy for
Yeah.
that. So our strategy for local mission is to work through other agencies and to devote X amount of our resources.
I have a comment on that. I would say if people on session are not aware of the clearly defined goals and objectives, that that's a problem. Because sometimes I've run into, there seems to be a disconnect between what session thinks our goals are and what others. And I have seen that with the youth mission trip. I've seen that with the adult mission trip. And sometimes that's been frustrating because I'm co-chair of Peacemakers. We're authorized to do activities, to do this, and we have a strategy. It needs to be more clearly defined, obviously. And I think other committees have a strategy, but it needs to be more clearly defined. But who listens? Who wants to hear it? Some of them are explicitly in the annual report. And it should really be a statement of what we do and then a reporting. That's the piece we're missing.
What I'm saying is, how much detail do people need? How much is that going to motivate them to get involved or not involved, or give their resources or not give their resources?
But it's not about, I mean, to me, strategy is not about detail. It's about strategy.
Strategies may be unclear. Because I think what we need to do is share this with session. Maybe what we could talk about, I think this under personal reflection, what issues have come up for you? What do you want for your church with regard to its social justice ministry? Maybe we could, is there something that came out during this study that is strong for you?
I started out with militarism and the amount of money that is spent on a military budget and fighting wars.
What I would like us to do as a church is to really look at our privilege and how that participates in continuing privilege and taking away from the poor. And one of the strategies, I think we could be more working together with other types of people, maybe for social justice, or, I mean, that's one way, but I think we also need to look at ourselves, and the UCC has a really good program that is a possibility we could bring into the church. It's sort of a self-examination around how we participate in structural racism or privilege, you know.
This is what we're asking. We're asking what they would like to have happen in regards to social
Just
issues
put bullet points
within
in
the
there.
church. Here. What issues have come up for you, where do you want your church with regard to its social justice ministry? So it sounds like, Ray, you're saying it would be nice to have other churches come to Mac Plymouth and have more of a sharing.
So is that okay, economic priorities?
Sure.
That covers most of this?
I think Tim was saying job creation as a specific. Well, advocacy as a strategy. What is our church's role? Do we see ourselves as we need to advocate in public policy about the various social justice issues?
Well, I'll add mine. Mine was to improve spiritual growth of members. Because I think unless people feel spiritually strong, they're going to have trouble participating in social ministry. So, which then will
Draw them to address
some of these
For
Sort of
Issues.
call us out.
Yeah, it will call us out.
We're
Once-
stronger, so we can give more.
Right, so it would be strengthen the individual members of the church to be stronger in their own spiritual life, which then will get them to be more interested in social justice. That was my issue.
This seems like extremely rich dialogue. And it would be
That's
a
why we had an
shame.
extra week.
Yeah, and it would be a shame to not have this somehow communicated also to the congregation. Ongoing dialogue, broader dialogue. Because what is our role in social justice shouldn't be a small group of people.
So one of the things we had as an idea was taking this prophetic faith series and running it again in the fall during a weeknight, because we know we don't get enough participation here because the time is somewhat strange. So would people be open to that? Because we already have the curriculum, we have people who've led each session. Would there be? Yeah.
Eyeball to eyeball. Are you going tomorrow night? I'll pick you up. I think all of this can be expanded from this group. The action part of it can be expanded, but we must get meet people and you invite some individuals.
And maybe going to people who cannot attend evening events, maybe senior wellness. I think there's very rich experience there to be tapped.
Yes.
But I think that's a great idea. Bring it back.